Well, it's Dr. Joyce Alberts, clinical psychologist, working in private practice and based in North Canterbury, New Zealand. It's me again. I am wanting to really dig in and look at the death of John O'Keefe and the subsequent criminal cases that have mushroomed out of this situation, this tragic situation. So this has been going on for quite some time. Many others are covering this on YouTube. Many people who are more experienced, more knowledgeable than I am. I would point to Emily D. Baker, for example. I would point to Peter Dragos, the lawyer, no. I'd also point to attorney Melanie Little and brother counsel for more detailed information and real breakdown of the legal complexities of this case and subsequent cases. I'm looking at it as a psychologist, really wanting to understand the dynamics between the individuals involved and how a case like this can lead to where we are today. And today is the 22nd of July, 2026. So first of all, I am going to introduce you to John O'Keefe and his family, and Karen and her family. I have put together a few diagrams because I'm more of a visual person, and to see things visually helps to hold things in mind for me. And this, because this case also is so complex and there are so many interactions and connections that just will literally blow your mind. And as attorney Melanie Little might say, could actually make your head pop off. So I'm going to share screens at certain times. I also have pulled up a number of news articles which I may refer to as we go through. But let me first do the first one. And let's have a look at this. Okay. So this is John O'Keefe, who tragically passed away on the 29th January 2022. John has a brother, Paul. He has his parents, who I've got up here. His dad is also known as John O'Keefe, and I believe John O'Keefe II, and his mum is Peggy. He has a brother, Paul, and unfortunately his sister has passed away, as well as her partner. Her sister, John O'Keefe's sister and partner, had two children, a niece and a nephew of John O'Keefe. I've put JJ down here, but it's actually C, the initial C. After the death of John O'Keefe's sister and her partner, John O'Keefe took over the care of his niece and nephew. And that's going to become an important thing to think about as I introduce this. At the time of John O'Keefe's death, he was in a relationship with Karen Reid. Karen Reid has at least one brother who I have seen present in court proceedings and is a supporter of his sister, and obviously her parents. Her father is William or Bill Reid. I cannot at the moment remember her mother's name, but at some time I may show that to you. Okay, if this is clear, I hope this is that you're able to see this, because now we start to add on some key players here. So John has three friends that I'm sure he had more than three friends. He sounds like a great guy, and he was well respected in the community for stepping up and taking over the care of his niece and nephew. The first person I've got here is Kieran Roberts. So John O'Keefe and Kieran Roberts knew each other during high school, and in fact, my understanding is that they attended their school prom together. John O'Keefe was friends with Brian Higgins, and Brian Higgins had at times gone to John O'Keefe's house to watch American football and to hang out. He also has a friend, Jennifer McCabe, who plays a pivotal role in all of this. And Jennifer got to know John, or Jen got to know John through connections with his niece. My understanding is that one of Jennifer's daughters knew the niece through school and sports activities, and that's how Jen became friends with John. Another key thing to be aware of is the Alberts family. Disclaimer here, my name is Alberts with an S, not Albert, and there is no connection between my family or my husband's family and the Albert family in Canton, Massachusetts. So, first of all, I have not put them in chronological order. I don't know the birth order of the people, and there are more family members, but I've just named the key ones. There's a brother, Kevin, a brother, Chris Albert, who's married to Julie. They have a son, Colin. Then there's Brian Albert, who's married to Nicole Albert, and they have a son, Brian Albert Jr., and a daughter who's actually Caitlin Albert. These are also important people, and I'll explain as we go through. Now let's have a look at the friendships and relationships. So, Kevin Albert, let's start there. Kevin Albert is a detective in the Canton Police Department. So, the death of John O'Keefe occurred in the town Canton, which is close to Boston, which is part of in the state of Massachusetts. There's the Canton Police Department, the Boston Police Department, and the Massachusetts State Police Department. You've also got another law enforcement organization called the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Department. On top of that, you've got the Federal Police, or often the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. So America, for those in New Zealand, we're used to one police department, which is nationwide. In America, each state has different police departments. You could have a sheriff department, you've got the state troopers, you've got the Texas Rangers, you've got marshals, universities such as Harvard University, which is in the Boston area, that also will have its own police department. When I traveled to Boston many years ago, I actually saw the account, which was the Harvard University Police. So Kevin Albert was a detective in the Canton Police Department. I haven't put this here, but Chris Albert, and this I understood was after the death of John O'Keefe in 2022, became a member of the Select Board, the Canton Select Board, which would be the equivalent, from my understanding, to a city council that we would have here in New Zealand, but different from our New Zealand City Council. The Canton Select Board essentially oversaw and funded the Canton Police Department, essentially were their bosses. And then down here we've got Brian Albert. Brian Albert was a Boston police officer, and he was also best mates with Brian Higgins. Hence, I've got a green line from Brian Albert to Brian Higgins. Now, Nicole Alberts is the sister of Jennifer McCabe. Hence, I've got a double green line, which shows an emotional connection, very, very strong emotional connection. They are not just sisters, apparently they are very, very close. Then you have, I understand Brian Albert Jr. may have served time in the military, may still be in the military. Let's move on here. Brian Higgins. So both Brian Albert and Brian Higgins are ex-military, and Brian Higgins is an officer in the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer. So we've got a Boston police officer here, Boston police officer here, Canton police officer here, an ATF officer here. So I've got it showing a close emotional connection between Jennifer and John. And obviously, John, very strong emotional bond and connection with his nieces. Kerry Roberts, I've got shown her connection with John O'Keefe here, but also with Peggy O'Keefe. And that became apparent, especially during the trials. At this point here, so I'm introducing everything around the death of John O'Keefe, and this is prior. So at this stage, Kerry and Jennifer I don't think they even know each other. They may be aware of each other, but they don't know each other. But Kerry has a connection with John through high school, going to the prom together, and had formed quite a close bond with Peggy O'Keefe. Jennifer and Karen became close friends prior to the death of John O'Keefe, and you'll see the triangle here, and that indicates that both Karen Reid and Jennifer McCabe had an autoimmune illness, multiple sclerosis, and they actually formed a bond through that. Unfortunately, Karen has more health concerns than just MS. That was just one of her health difficulties that she has faced. So Jennifer McCabe is married to Matthew McCabe. It becomes important because he works in IT, he was an IT business, an IT consultant, so quite up there in terms of technology. They have at least three daughters that I understand, and later on I'll identify one of the daughters by name. But that's showing friendships and relationships at this point. So, as I said, John O'Keefe died tragically on the 29th of January 2022. On the 28th of January 2022, John O'Keefe and Karen had gone to a bar in Canton and then were invited to go to the bar where Brian Higgins, Nicole Albert, I understand Chris Albert, Julie Albert, Jennifer McCabe, and Matt McCabe were, and I understand that's the waterfall, but I will double check on that. So at some point in the evening, Karen and John O'Keefe go to the bar where all these other people are: Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Chris Albert, Julie Albert, Jennifer McCabe, and Matt McCabe. A couple of other people were there, and there were some friends of Karen who did give evidence. And all these people, they've been at a bar for some time. This is getting close to midnight. They've been having a number of drinks. Brian Higgins and Brian Albert had actually been to New York, and they had just returned from attending the funeral of a fellow police officer. They had stopped at another place along the way and had some drinks, and then were at the waterfall, and they are drinking again. John and Karen enter the bar, start socializing with people, and they're also having a few drinks. I understand John O'Keefe was drinking beer, and Karen Reid was having a mixture of vodka and soda. Then, as the waterfall is closing, Brian Albert invites everyone basically back to his place to continue the party. My understanding is that Brian Higgins arrives at Brian and Nicole's house first. Chris Albert and Julie Albert are described by others as going to Brian Albert's place. However, Chris later on says in one of his statements that Julie Albert developed a migraine, so she went home, and then he walked home from the waterfall. So I'm a bit confused there. My understanding is Colin Albert and Caitlin Albert were at the home of Brian Albert, obviously Caitlin Albert's home as well, as it was, I'm not sure whether it was Colin's birthday, someone's birthday, but someone was having a birthday, and so there was a number of young people there. Caitlin might not have been there, Ellie might have been there, so it's all a bit confusing, and you'll understand why it's confusing. I'll try to clear some of that up. So the people go back to Brian Albert's place. Brian Higgins arrives first, followed by Brian, Albert, and Nicole Albert. Then Jennifer and her husband Matt arrive. Karen and John leave the waterfall. Karen is driving in her Lexus SUV, and John is the passenger. John rings Jennifer and tries to get the address. He doesn't know the address of Brian Albert, so there's no direct, close relationship between John and Brian Albert, but there is between John and Brian. So he's trying to find the address. Jennifer rings him at one point, trying to figure out where he is, sends him a text like, "Where are you?" Brian Higgins sends John a text. This is after midnight, saying, "Are you coming?" So according to Brian Albert, Jennifer, Matt, Brian Higgins, and Cole, they see the vehicle arriving. They see Karen's Lexus arrive, but they absolutely deny that John O'Keefe came into the house, whereas Karen Reid says they arrived, that she was uncertain about whether they truly were invited, because it was sort of like a general invite in the bar, like, "Come back to our place," and it wasn't directly to her. She doesn't really know Brian Albert, all these people over here. She does know Brian Higgins and Jen, of course, but she doesn't know these people. She's also not feeling well. She also has an irritable bowel disease, Crohn's disease, and she's not feeling well, and she just wants to go home. It is after midnight, and they've been out for some time and had a few drinks. So Karen's statement is that John O'Keefe goes, "Well, I'll just go and check. I'll go ask." So Karen's statement is that John O'Keefe gets out of the vehicle and she sees him go inside the house. These people deny that, said he never arrives. Karen states she waits and waits and waits and gets annoyed, thinking, "Oh, he's just got caught up in talking and socializing. He knows these people, I don't." She's in pain. Anyone who's got Crohn's disease knows that when you get that pain, you know what's going to happen next. And you just want to be in your own space, use your own bathroom or restroom. You don't want to be using a stranger's that you've never really even been inside their house. You don't know how far it is from walking inside the house to where the nearest bathroom is. All of these things will be really important for someone with a condition such as Crohn's disease. Not only that, she's a colostomy bag. She has been through so many surgeries. So when she's in a state like this, the last thing she's going to do is use a strange bathroom. She needs to be in her own bathroom where she has her own equipment to do what she needs to do for herself. So she leaves. Jen will say that she was watching and she saw Karen reverse and leave. Okay, so it's now snowing. It's the 29th of January, 2022. It is snowing. You could see it was snowing before they left. As they left the waterfall, you can see on various surveillance footage. But it's not heavily snowing. It's not like a blizzard. In New Zealand, we'd call it a dusting. So yes, there is snow. No one's using snow chains. At this point in time, no one's even ploughing, digging out driveways. There's a dusting of snow. In fact, a weather forecaster who gave evidence at the second trial said there was enough snow to track a cat. So if a cat walked across the lawn, you would see the footprints of the cat, but not that it was a thick covering. Why I mention that is I can't understand why these two, Jennifer and Brian Higgins, who've both texted saying, "Where are you? Are you coming?" don't go outside where they see the car. And they're texting saying, "Are you coming?" But they don't just open the door and go outside and say, is there a problem? Hey, you guys coming in? I want you to come in. No, they're apparently, Jennifer in particular, being described as a curtain twitcher. She's standing at the window and she says she's just looking. Doesn't do anything else. Okay, so that's setting the scenario. And this is so complex. I mean, other LawTubers have been covering this almost daily, at least weekly, for years. and there's no way I could do justice to any of that, nor do I tend to. But I'm looking at the relationships, connections, and trying to understand how the dynamic has led up to where we are today. Okay, so the accusation. Okay, so you're going to see this graph starts to change. So we have Jen McCabe accuses Karen Reid of reversing her SUV into John O'Keefe at speed, causing him to fall backwards, sustain a traumatic brain injury that would lead very quickly to his death, and drove away, leaving him there. Jen McCabe will state that nobody in the house, so nobody in Brian Albert's house, was aware that this had occurred, and that John O'Keefe was on the lawn in the snow. I'll make sense of that. So that's the accusation. Paul O'Keefe, who's John's brother, to this day believes that this is what happened. He wasn't there, he wasn't present, he wasn't a witness, but he obviously believes it from what he's been told by Jennifer and Kerry Roberts. And this is important. So now we've got lines of hostility. There's clear hostility now towards Karen. So in the early hours of the morning, Karen Reid has returned to John O'Keefe's home. And this is really interesting. This is a case where the surveillance footage, ring camera footage, becomes absolutely critical and is presented in court during, spoiler alert, 2 trials so far. But critical surveillance footage or ring camera footage disappears. So there's no ring camera footage of Karen arriving back at John O'Keefe's house after she dropped him off at Brian Higgins, but there is ring camera footage of her leaving in the early hours of the morning as she reverses her SUV out of the garage, hits or collides with John O'Keefe's truck, causing damage to a taillight, and then driving off. So let's back up. So Karen Reid arrives back at John O'Keefe's. I understand about her car SUV Wi-Fi or phone Wi-Fi connects to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi in the house at 12:36 a.m. So there is a time that's been documented that she arrives back at his house, which is important. No ring footage of that, though. Jennifer will say that she sees Karen leave Brian Higgins' place at around 12:45, claiming, and this becomes the prosecution, or in Canton it's the Commonwealth, the prosecution in New Zealand would say the Crown, that is the claim, that that's the time of death, 12:45. But it's irrefutable evidence that Karen Reid was back at John's house before 12:45 at 12:36 a.m. So that's the accusation. So what happens? She starts texting, she starts calling, she's not getting through to John, she becomes more and more upset. It's quite possible, we haven't heard from Karen yet, but it's quite possible she may have had a few more drinks. But she's trying to get hold of John O'Keefe. She gets really angry. She thinks he's just left her to it. She's not feeling well. She's now looking after the two, at least one of the children. And she gets angry at her boyfriend, and she leaves some rather vile, horrible voice messages for him. But he doesn't receive them. He never, ever receives them, because it's true. John O'Keefe is dead at this time. Well, that's the theory. I shouldn't say it's true. It's not documented as time of death, but it does seem clear that he's answering phone calls, taking text messages, and then after this time, when he's gone inside the house, allegedly, that he doesn't answer his text messages or cell phone anymore. And it does seem to be inactive. It does show, and it's been contested, but the experts who have looked into this have stated that his cell phone is showing movement, which equates to moving up and down flights of stairs, which in Brian Albert's house would make sense. There's a basement down below, the main living areas on the first floor, and then the bedrooms on the third floor. So if he's gone down into the basement, up into the first floor, maybe down into the basement or outside. There's also steps, which suggest that he either his phone was being moved or he was moving with his phone. So Karen falls asleep. It seems that it's after 1 o'clock in the morning. Various people are given various different times. It's been claimed that Colin Albert has already left the property and was not present when John comes into their house. However, Jennifer McCabe's daughter Ellie accidentally, during the first trial, slips up and says Colin left before John was in the house. She's trying to distance John, but she says John in the house. She clearly makes that statement on the witness stand, catches herself, and when she next, you can see the look on her face as she realizes what she's just said. Because they've practiced this. Colin was not in the house. John O'Keefe was not in the house. Colin had already left. John O'Keefe never came in the house. And she accidentally says the opposite. And the way it comes out would be suggesting, I'm not an expert in this area, but it does come across as genuine because it just slips out. Okay, we'll just keep moving on. So Brian Higgins, he leaves, and again, it's all of these people are leaving after 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30, somewhere around that. Brian Higgins leaves. He initially says he goes home because it's been a long day. He's been to a funeral, he's been driving, he's been drinking, but he doesn't go home. He goes to the Canton Police Department because he has an office there. The chief of the Canton Police Department has allowed Brian Higgins, who's not a member of the Canton Police, to actually have, by courtesy, an office. So he goes there. So he's at the police station now. Brian and Nicole apparently go to bed. Jennifer and Matt go home and go to bed. Chris and Julie have gone home and, I assume, to bed. So everyone's now in bed. Karen Reid wakes up in the early hours of the morning. It's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. She does make a phone call to Jen, and we only know what Jen has claimed Karen has said in that phone call. We don't know what Karen states that she said because she hasn't given evidence yet. But Jennifer claims that Karen makes a statement that she left John at the bar, the waterfall, and she doesn't know where he is, and she's worried. And Jen goes, no, you didn't leave him at the waterfall. You actually you came with him to Brian's, but then you both left. It's a bit weird. Anyway, that's what she says. So then it ends up that Jennifer and Kerry, because Karen also rings Kerry because she knows that Kerry is a friend of John, and she elicits their help to go find John. So Karen jumps in her Lexus SUV, and you can see footage of her reversing out of the garage. She makes contact with or collides with John O'Keefe's car. You can see the wheel of his vehicle move. So definitely there's contact. And this is when Karen Reid's taillight is cracked. Karen travels to Jennifer's place, and then Jennifer suggests they go back to John O'Keefe's to look for him, to make sure he's not there. Karen's like, well, I just come from there. He's not there. He's not there to come home with me. He's not there. So they go back. Kerry follows in her vehicle. They go back Jen and Karen's vehicle, and they go back to John O'Keefe's, and there's footage of that. There's ring footage of Karen driving into the driveway, Karen, Jen, and Kerry getting out, or going into John's house. So there is that footage, just not the critical time when Kerry returns to John's. So then they get in Kerry's vehicle, and now they drive to Brian Albert's, 34 Fairview, and John lives at One Meadow. It's very close together. It's a smaller sort of little, if you like, offskirt of Boston, Canton. So they arrive at Brian's house. So it's been described as a relatively small front yard. It's a split level house. There's a basement, the main living area, bedrooms on the top. A grass area, there's a flagpole, there's a hydrant, there's the road, and John O'Keefe's body is lying there. And Karen spots it straight away. She's looking for a body. She's not looking for a body. She's looking out for John, wondering what's happened to him. Did he slip and fall? There's something's happened to him. And they discovered John O'Keefe's body. Okay, you're going to see here that I've introduced some more individuals. We have Yuri, which I've spelt this incorrectly here, Buchanan, and Sean Good, Trooper Paul, and another key one is Michael Proctor. These are all police officers. These are all Boston police officers. So Brian Albert's a Boston police officer, and John O'Keefe's a Boston police officer. Kevin Albert is a police officer for the Canton Police Department. Michael Proctor has a sister, Courtney Alberg. I know when I read that, I was like, wow, because she's always been called Courtney Proctor, like Michael's sister, but she's married. So Proctor is her maiden name, and her married name is Alberg. Not Albert, Alberg. And I was like, oh my goodness. Now, Courtney is close friends with Julie Albert, Chris Albert's wife. She's also very, very close with her brother. Like, apparently they text multiple times a day, every day. That's how close they are. They're really close. And through that, Michael knows Julie and Chris through his relationship with his sister and the friendship between Julie and Courtney. They become quite close friends. Julie Albert is so close, she actually babysits and looks after Courtney's children for more than 9 years. They go to family get-togethers together. Colin Albert, very close with Courtney Albert, and in fact, he was ring bearer at her wedding. That's how close that relationship. Michael Proctor was also in the wedding party, so obviously these people know each other. In fact, the Courtney and Michael's parents described the Alberts, and I'm not sure if they just mean these people or the wider Alberts, as their second family. That's how close. Thanksgiving in America is an important celebration. In New Zealand, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but it appears that it's a really important family time, a time of thanks for everything. And Chris and Julie have been to Thanksgiving dinners at Courtney's place where Michael's been present. They've been to barbecues at their parents', so Courtney and Michael's parents' place. So they've been socializing together for many, many years. At one point, it was suggested that Julie Albert helped Michael and his wife Elizabeth with care of one of their children when they were let down by someone. Julie and Chris sort of deny this, and it seems that she did it once. But again, it's just so confusing who you talk to. Okay, so we've got Michael Proctor, we've got Yuri, sorry, it's spelled wrong there, Kenneth, Sean Good, Trooper Paul. We now have disconnect between Karen and John's nieces, Karen and John's parents, Karen and Paul O'Keefe. Things really start to get complicated. And as I said, when you look at all of these relationships and all of these interconnections, it really starts to get weird. Now, after John O'Keefe's death, it then becomes Kerry and Jennifer become close friends. They weren't friends to begin with, but now they're close friends. The relationship between Kerry and Peggy is important because it was Kerry who insisted that she pick up the O'Keefes and take them to the hospital where John was. So she gets in their ear immediately, and that will become important later. I mentioned this one. I'm also going to screen share in a minute, and we'll move to another one. But now we've got all this hostility. So these red lines, the hostility to Karen, all focusing on Karen. Michael Proctor, as the investigator, within hours has decided to accept Jen's accusation that it was Karen who caused the death of John O'Keefe by reversing her SUV into him and leaving him to die in the snow. Chris and Julie absolutely despise her. Courtney despises her. Jennifer despises her. Matthew, the Alberts, and Higgins, Brian Higgins, sometimes referred to as Higgy Bear, had a thing for Karen. They did kiss and they had flirtatious texts for about 2 weeks, and then Karen ghosted him, stopped, didn't acknowledge him, didn't respond. So he's gone from seeing her as a potential partner, romantic interest, and I say partner seriously, because that's what he was saying in his text messages. He wanted a relationship with her. He didn't want just a fling, he wanted a relationship. And now he doesn't. Trust me, he does not. And of course, Brian Albert and Cole, pretty sure their children, all the children over here, absolutely despise her. So let me stop that. And I'm going to share another screen. This one I can zoom in. I'll just move that up there. Play games with me, then that's what I'll do. Thanks. Okay. Let me screen share on this one. I'll just move things. I can zoom in when I bring them in. Okay. Let's screen share again. All right. Okay, so as we can see here, Paul O'Keefe, John's brother, and his mother, in particular, I've watched the expressions during court trials and statements. It's quite clear they are very hostile towards Karen, and they really do believe that she caused John's death. As I said, Jennifer accuses Karen of this, and Jennifer really takes a lead role in this. If I get time to do more, I'll explain why Jen McCabe is such an important character in all of this. She becomes close friends with Kerry Roberts after John's death. If I move over here, I can zoom on this. For some reason it's gone, where's this gone wonky like this? It's annoying. Zoom, oh yeah, that's better. Let's go in over here. I've corrected and introduced more police officers. We've got Sean Good, Yuri Buchanan, Sean. I've got Sean Good twice. Beg your pardon. There's only one Sean Good. Trooper Paul and Officer Kelly Diva. Sorry. Diva. I'd say Diva. Kenneth Berkowitz was the police officer. He was police chief, I should say, not just a police officer. got friends of Michael Proctor's down here. There were multiple friends he's known for many, many, many years, and I've put his sister over there. So let's go. This is the first one I want to bring up and zoom in. So after the first trial, which was in 2024, Michael Proctor is relieved of his duties and he's transferred out of the Norfolk State Police Department. And this is like their attorney's office, or about where the barristers are, etc. In March of 2025, he's fired for inappropriate conduct, sharing text messages and information with his sister and friends. He was texting his sister on the first day of the investigation immediately. He names John O'Keefe, identifies the victim in this tragedy to his friends. So he gets fired for inappropriate comments, and the text messages and statements he made about Karen are just abhorrible. They just absolutely just make you go, how can anyone talk about anyone else, another human being, in the way he did? He shared her medical information in such a derogatory way with his friends. He objectified Karen Reid in a horrendous, sexist way. So he loses his job. He appeals and attempts to have this termination overturned, but he withdraws his appeal. Basically, his lawyers, his union-appointed lawyers, leave him in the lurch. We're not dealing with you, buddy. Obviously, you lied to us. When the content of his phone messages, text messages, WhatsApp messages, photographs he's got, all of this becomes known, and it is horrendous. And in December of 2025, he's barred from ever working in law enforcement. His certificate as a police officer is withdrawn, which means he can't apply to work in any other police department. Within hours of being assigned to investigate John's death, Michael is messaging his sister's friends and colleagues saying Karen did it. Within hours, he's predetermined the outcome. Let's have a look. Let's go to Kevin Albert. So remember, he's police officer in the Kenton Police Department. After the trial, this is the first trial, the July 2024 trial, he is placed on leave because of what Michael Proctor discloses through his text messages in the first trial. So Michael and Kevin, and this is why Michael Proctor should never have been investigating this, they've got a connection, they work colleagues, so they go and work on a case together, and they go and get so drunk that Kevin Albert contacts Michael the next day, says, I don't know where my gun is, and I think I've left my badge in your car. And Michael goes, well, give me your address, I'll drop it off at your place. I'll put it in your letterbox. So he gets placed on leave. Yuri Buchanek, October 2025. So this is after when the content of Michael Proctor's phone becomes known in public. He is suspended and then transferred to do an admin role as a result of his action. He was a supervisor of Michael Proctor. Then we have Sean Good. So I've got him in there twice, unfortunately. I'll address that soon. 3rd of November 2025, he is placed on admin leave and then resigns from the police on the 2nd of June 2026. So he's first placed on admin leave again because of the content that was discovered on Michael Proctor's phone. And recently, another investigation has come to light. And this is when they were investigating Michael Proctor's relationship with Chris and Julie Albert and his sister Courtney. It became known that more information, more documents, more stuff around what Sean Good and Michael Proctor were messaging and saying about people for years, showing clear bias, absolutely horrendous. So he's resigned. Didn't get fired. He was probably given the opportunity to resign. So he's resigned. Kelly Dever, this is the last one, and then I'll finish for today. Kelly Dever gave evidence, and I watched her evidence in the second trial. She had initially said that she saw Brian Higgins, he's over here somewhere, Brian Higgins, and Ken Berkowitz go into the Sally Port where, at the police department, where Karen's SUV had been seized and put for a long time. They were in there for a long time. She saw this on the cameras in the police station. She later then says, no, that was a false memory. Even though, yes, I said it, but it was a false memory. So after the second trial, she resigns from the Boston Police Department. So we have all these police officers, and there are some more that have either resigned, retired. Oh, I should say Brian Albert. He was a Boston police officer at the time. He's resigned. He no longer works with them. Michael Proctor, gone. He was put on leave. Kevin, put on leave because of his conduct. Should have been fired, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. Yuri should have been fired, but that's just my opinion. He's moved to a desk job. He's retired, I should say. Brian Albert's retired. He's retired. Sean Good resigned, should have been sacked, should have been terminated in the same way as Proctor, and maybe that's still to come. Who knows? There may be more fallout as a result of the investigation into Brian O'Keefe's death. In fact, there are multiple civil suits before the courts, and this case gets so complicated. And just when you think, every time, just when you think, wow, there can't be anything else, this case couldn't get any more complicated, more documents, more information comes to light. And sitting all the way over here in North Canterbury, New Zealand, like attorney Melanie Little, my head just pops up. It's just like too much. I'm going to look into this some more. Hopefully this made some sense, and putting a visual up there helped with that. Be interesting to see if anyone else watches this video. But for now, I'll leave it there and say ka kite.